How you doing? I'm good, thanks. I think Pastor Mark that lives here, he lives in the basement someplace. I think he uses the stool, and I think that's kind of how he does his deal, right? I'm like the Sundance Kid. I can't shoot unless I'm moving. You know, you see that movie? It's about 412 years old now, but remember that old movie? Yeah. And they're down in South America, and the guy wants to hire him, and he can't hit the broadside of a barn. He says, "Can I move?" The guy says, "What? Can I move?" "Yeah, go ahead." Suddenly he could hit everything as long as he's moving. So that's kind of the way it works for me when I'm teaching. If I sit down, I can't hit anything, but if I can move, then we're good. Did y'all get one of these? Yeah. Somebody need one? You need one? Somebody hand her one. There we go. All right, they're Johnny on the spot. So last time I was here, we had to go through step 4, and step 4 is always like the tough one. So I'm really happy to be here when I'm on the upside. This is the good news. This is if you really got honest with yourself, you finally looked in the mirror and realized the person staring back at you was the problem, and you really wanted to make some progress. Now you can do it. And these are the steps, and these are some of the things that are going to be significant to how you make successful moves and successful changes in your life. I want to tell you something that we talk about often when it comes to this whole process of Celebrate Recovery, is that sometimes we come into these 12 steps and we look at them as, okay, these are the 12 steps that are going to get me from that mess I was in to where I'm going to be over here, and I'm going to be all together, and I'm going to have my life together, and I'm going to run for president. Well, no, you don't have to have your life together to run for president. But anyway, you can... But you're gonna do something worthwhile, so you're going to get out of that mess. And you go, as soon as I finish those 12 steps, I'm going to have it all together. I'm going to be ready to roll. And instead of recognizing that the 12 steps are not the 12 steps by which you recover so that you can quit when you're done. The 12 steps are the ways that everybody's been living that didn't have the problems we had in the first place. These are things that you do over and over and over again. They're things you do every day. They're things that you make a part of your life process. And so I want us to get a hold of that when we start talking about these things that are going to lead to some sort of victory in our life, that these are things that we need to instill in our life, not just things that we need to do once and go, well, got it together now. Yeah, because nobody's got it together. You know that. Right? We're just in various stages of disrepair. But nobody's got it together. That's the coolest thing about CR. I tell everybody, I would rather come here and get a chance to talk with you guys about these principles than preach on Sunday morning. Now, don't tell the people there that keep it. Because the problem there is I have to spend the first 2/3 of the morning trying to convince them that they have a problem that they're pretending they don't have, and they're faking and covering up, so that I can spend the last 5 minutes trying to help them. The coolest thing about CR is you just walk in the door and go, hey, I'm all screwed up. Where do I sit? And then and that way we can get right to the material, So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to talk about some of these steps that we have involved. And in Celebrate Recovery, we love acrostics. We love to take a word and then use every letter of the word to make up sentences. It's our favorite thing. So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to make an acrostic out of victory, which is where we are in Principle 5 and Step 7 tonight. So the first thing on here says that we have to voluntarily submit. We have to voluntarily submit to the change that God wants to make in our lives. And I'll tell you the thing, if I make you change, I'm the one changing. But if you initiate it, you're the one changing. You get that? If I'm the one making you change, then I'm changing. I'm the one getting better. I'm the one that understands what's going on. I'm the one that understands how things work. I'm the one that's making clear decisions. And you're still just messing up, at least when I'm not looking or when I can't stop you. But when you initiate it, when you voluntarily say, hey, it's me, let's work on me. When you do that, you get better. Right? Yeah. And some of you have been there. I mean, some of you were clean when they locked you up, right? You couldn't get the stuff. You were locked up, man. You got sober. It was amazing. And it had nothing to do with you. Somebody made it happen, which is the reason why you were drunk within a half hour of getting out, because you hadn't changed. So you have to voluntarily be involved in this. So I don't know what you're working on. Everybody in here is working on all kinds of things. Somebody suggested I have a food addiction. I just prefer to believe I like to eat whenever possible. Preferably something sweet. But I'm sure it's not a problem. We're all working on something. We're all doing different kinds of stuff. But if you don't volunteer for it, if somebody's making you do it, if your PO's riding on you, or your mom's chewing after you, or your roommates are on your back, or your employer said get straight, or you're fired, if they're doing it to you, you're not getting better. You've got to initiate it. When you initiate it, that's when you get better. We have to identify the character defects. This is a thing that reflects all the way back to step 4. And it's that issue of the fact that we've got to get to the place where we're no longer hiding. Because what all of us do, no matter what we're addicted to, part of our addictive behavior is to hide. We take the real person that we are and we hide. Now, some of us are hiding because early on people told us, hey, shut up, get in the corner, get out of here, you stupid little kid. Some of us learned real early on that apparently we didn't have a voice and we didn't have a place, and so we just started hiding. Some of us did some really shameful things, and we're really hoping nobody looks too close. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why we hide. But we hide. It's part of what we do. And for us to experience victory, for us to experience freedom, for us to experience success, what we need to do is to stop hiding. And we have to stop blaming. Because isn't it amazing how everything is somebody else's fault? Somebody made us do it. Somebody made us do it. Somebody did this, and then they said that, and then, well, life's not fair, and it's really been tough, and man, I just need a little break. I just got to take the edge off. We don't want to just look in the mirror and go, hey, I'm thinking about getting wasted tonight. What do you think? We don't want to admit we're that bad, so we blame it on somebody else. We got to quit hiding. We got to quit blaming. And the other thing that we have to do, because sometimes when we start to finally admit the truth, is that we go to that kind of pity failure place that just goes, oh man, I'm no good, I'm just worthless, I can't do anything, I don't want to even try. Which is just another version of hiding. Because the reality is, as messed up as every one of us have been at some point in our lives, you are created in the image of God. And you have potential that you have not even begun to realize. Everybody in this room is created in the image of God. Now, we've buried that image behind a lot of stuff. And sometimes it takes a little while to clean off the crud and get ourselves going again to where the image of God is visible to somebody other than God. But it's in there. It's in there. I don't ever want to hear you say, oh, I'm just no good. I've blown it so much. Hey, you are created in the image of God. Let's dig deep and find it. Let's dig deep and find it. We got to admit what's going on here. We got to get a hold of that. So we got to identify with the character defects. And then you have to change your mind. That's the C in victory. You have to change your mind. There's a verse in Romans, and we quote part of it here. We quote Romans 12:1, and then we quote Romans 12:2, and we don't necessarily always put them together. And you do know that Paul didn't write Romans by saying, chapter 12, verse 1. It's not how he did that. It was literally a monk riding across Central Europe on a horse that decided to put the numbers in there so we could find our verses. So, I mean, it didn't come that way. And so sometimes we read the verse and then we stop. And Paul was still in the middle of his sentence. So we got to tie it together. I urge you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God. So forgive me, this is the old version. I learned it in. My problem is I have verses memorized in about 16 different translations. So I never know what's coming out. Some of you guys are in 2.7, you're doing that Bible memorization. And it's like, I know all those verses, I just don't know them in any one particular version. So I got the Weber version of all the verses. It's just a little bit from King James and a little bit from the NIV and a little bit from the Living Bible, and I got it all gelled together. But here's how it goes. I urge you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable act of worship. And that you no longer be conformed to this world, but that you be transformed by the renewing of your minds. Do you know that all of our mistakes start right here? All of our mistakes start right here. Because you don't do anything, you don't say anything until you think about it. Now, we get some patterns ingrained to where we can think and act almost at the same time. But it still starts here. It still starts here. Because when your body starts moving without your mind telling it to do it, we have names for those diseases that cause that to happen. The normal function is the mind goes first and then the body moves. And we want to change our minds so that we start moving and going and saying and doing the right thing. But I'll tell you, you can't start by trying to correct your mind. Not according to the verse. The verse says that the first thing you have to do is to urge you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto the Lord. I just need to know that God is not going to come up to you and say, now, Richard, let me explain to you how everything works. Because I know you're brilliant. You got a PhD in the universe. And let me just explain this to you. God's not going to do that. He's going to come and say, Richard, I need you to do this. And I need you to stop doing that. And you get to decide whether you're going to argue with him. Because the just live by faith, not by explanation. Some of us are waiting for God to explain to us how things work. If you were smart enough to understand how things work, you wouldn't be as screwed up as you are now. So us explaining it to you ain't going to help you. So we're not going to explain nothing. There's no explaining going on. We're going to tell you what you need to do, son. And that's what God's going to do. He's just going to come up and say, Richard, I need you to do this, and I need you to stop doing that. And immediately you decide whether you're going to present your body as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, or whether you're going to tell God, I don't think that's going to work. Let's try something else. That's the first thing you have to do. And Paul says, you know why you should do that? Because there is a God and you're not him. He said it's your reasonable act of worship. He said if you really turned your brain on and decided, gee, if I have an idea and God has an idea, I wonder who's right. I thought that was an easy one. It's God. Some of you are still working on it. Well, I don't know. No, that's an easy one. That was like a freebie, okay? So if you've got an idea and God's got an idea, I'm just telling you, God's right and you're wrong. And when he comes and says, Richard, I need you to do this. I need you to stop doing that. Paul says, you know why you should do that? Because it's the smart thing to do. It's the smart thing to do. That word reasonable actually means intelligent. It's the intelligent thing to do. Present your bodies to God as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto the Lord. And no longer be conformed to the patterns of this world. I'll tell you, if you ever get confused about what you're supposed to do, turn on MTV and do the opposite of everything you see. Whatever they do, do the opposite. Just do the opposite. He says, don't be conformed to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds. But I want you to notice it starts with obedience, and then your mind clears up. Because there's a whole bunch of stuff about God that will not make sense to you until you try it and go, that worked. That worked. That's amazing. You're never going to know that by watching from the outside. At some point, you got to jump in and decide you're going to do that. So that's how you change your mind. Then you got to turn over these character defects to God. You got to turn them over to God. You cannot 12-step your way to freedom. You can't do it. 12 steps are not going to get you free. The power of Jesus Christ is going to set you free. What the 12 steps do is teach you what to do with your freedom. Because a lot of us get our freedom from God and say, wow, that feels good. I'm going to go party. I mean, we just make dumb decisions. We take the freedom that God gives us, and instead of learning what to do, to learning how free people live, learning how free people think, learning how free people behave, we just use our freedom as kind of a new creative way to involve ourselves in the same sins and addictions that we were involved in before. I said, you can't do that. You can't do that. Jesus will set you free if you ask. If you confess your sins, He is faithful and just to forgive you and to cleanse you from all unrighteousness. It's huge. But what you do next either takes that freedom and causes it to grow in your life, or takes that freedom and causes it to diminish. And the 12 steps are about taking the freedom that Christ gives you and learning to have it grow in your life. So you've got to be able to turn this stuff over to God. The next two, you really kind of have to take together. And it's the whole idea, one day at a time. And you know, how many times have we heard that? You know, live one day at a time and don't get ahead of yourself. I mean, we've got a million ways of saying that. And the R is the fact that recovery is a process. Recovery is a process. So this is one of the things where I've got to be able to talk to two kinds of people that are here tonight. For some of you that are kind of perfectionists, all or nothing, right or wrong, black or white kind of people, you're going to struggle with the fact that your recovery is going to be a process, and in somewhere along the line, you're going to make a mistake, you're going to fail, you're going to go back, and I mean, you know, how many times have we said, oh man, I'll never do it again, you know, until tomorrow. I mean, we always said, but here we go. And for some of you that are kind of on that kind of personality style, because some of you are like that. I had my oldest son is like that. He's black and white. I'll never forget when he came home from school one day. He said, you know, Dad, I got a lot of friends I don't like. What? Yeah, I got a lot of friends I don't like. I mean, he's just very black and white. You know, he was trying to socially be acceptable, but he was going, that guy's a nut, that guy's an idiot. I can't stand that guy. I mean, because he was just very opinionated, this very black-white. That's how he approached the world. His younger brother, 2 years younger, same mom and dad, lived at the same address, ate the same food. Nothing was black and white to him. The whole world was gray. You know, it's like, is that right or wrong? Well, I don't know. What do you think? You know, I mean, he just, you know, and it's not that he didn't have a brain. You just couldn't figure out how it worked. I mean, it was in there. And when you'd sit down and ask him, why'd you do that? He'd give you this long story that went over here and then around there and out to this other guy and then back over there and then over here and down there. And he'd go, see? Are you insane? Yeah, and his brother was like, black and white, right, wrong, in or out. Just that was him. If you tend to be that black and white, right or wrong kind of person, one of the things you're going to do is not give yourself credit for the success that you're making, because you don't tend to reward progress. You only reward completion. So you withhold praise from others and you withhold praise from yourself until you attain the goal, until you finish everything on the list, until you reach whatever the new limit was. You were trying, I'm going to bench press this, or I'm going to read this many books, or I'm going to, it could be anything. But whatever it is, it's only good when you're done. And you never give yourself or anybody else any credit until they're done. And if you're really hard-nosed, you just kind of barely acknowledge that and say, what's the new goal? Because you're always pushing. You need to understand that your recovery is going to be a process. You're not going to get it all better in one day. And you need to give yourself credit. On the other side is the younger brother. Everything's gray. You need to understand that your recovery is going to be a process. But you have to be careful that you don't excuse your continual failures by hiding behind process. And say, well, I'm still working on it. I'm just kind of struggling. And the reality is you're not working on anything. You're just kind of coasting, not really putting in any effort. You're not really getting any better. And you're excusing it by using this reality that recovery is a process. So another way to look at this is trends and events. Trends and events. We want the trend of your life to be upward. Acknowledging the fact that at times there will be events when you fail, and sometimes fail badly. But if the trend is moving in the right direction, we can put up with events. What we don't want is the trend of your life going backward and you have a few good events. Because a lot of us live there. I mean, nobody here was a total failure. I mean, we sometimes describe ourselves that way, and sometimes we describe other people, they're just a total failure. Nobody's a total failure. I mean, they got up and got dressed, for crying out loud. You know, give them credit for something, you know. Hey, good job, got your pants on today, all right, you know. I mean, nobody's a total failure. But what we mean by when we say somebody's a total failure is that the trend of their life is just consistently and persistently down and wrong and bad. And then occasionally they have a good moment and they do something that actually makes sense. Recovery is a process. It is a trend in the right direction that will have events where you fail. Just like that. See? Just like that. So one day at a time, recovery is a process. And that brings us all the way back to the fact that you must choose. That's the why there in recovery, is that you must choose. And it's all the way back to the very first thing, and that is that you have to voluntarily submit. It just kind of makes a big circle. This gets up to you. Because the rest of us can't recover for you. The only person I can recover for is me. I can't recover for you. I just got to own it. But isn't that one of the things that we didn't do as an addict? We just didn't own anything. Because again, it was always somebody else's fault. And that's not the case. So you got a chance to make it. You can make it. This will work. Victory is yours. Jesus will set you free. You do a few right things, and it's amazing how much better you'll get. It's amazing how much better you'll get. Because you know that hole that you dug yourself for? You know, you got into? Remember that hole you dug? You did that all by yourself. You know what happens when you start to get out? The God of the universe helps you out. And it is amazing. You can dig a 25-year hole of failure and mistakes and all kinds of stuff, and God can instantly dig you out of that thing. Now, he does ask you, why don't you walk away from the hole so you don't fall back in? We call those 12 steps. You should be at least 12 steps away from the hole you dug. Celebrate recovery. God bless you guys. We'll see you.
Thanks, buddy.